has been an expert manipulator. She has this way of making you doubt yourself, twisting the truth just enough to make you wonder if you're the one in the wrong. I spent most of my life under her control, bending over backward to earn her love and approval, but it was never enough. When I met Jake, I thought I had finally found someone who saw me for who I really was. Not the insecure, second-guessing version my mother had molded, but the person I wanted to be. Jake was everything she claimed to want for me: kind, successful, family-oriented. But from the moment I introduced him, she hated him. At first, it was subtle. She would make passive-aggressive comments about his job, his appearance, even his laugh. But over time, it escalated. "He's not serious about you," she'd say. "A man like that? He'll leave the moment things get hard. He reminds me of your father," she'd whisper in the kitchen, as if it were some deep, dark secret. And we both know how that turned out. Jake, to his credit, always brushed it off. "She'll come around," he told me. "She's just protective." I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. But as our wedding day got closer, my mother's warnings turned into outright sabotage. I'd hear from family members that she had been talking behind my back, planting seeds of doubt in their minds about Jake's loyalty. She even pulled him aside once, telling him, "If you really love her, you'll walk away. She deserves someone better than you." I thought he'd laugh it off. I thought he'd see through her lies. I was wrong. 1 week before the wedding, Jake came home, pale and shaking. He wouldn't look me in the eye. "I can't do this," he said. And just like that, the life I had been building crumbled. Here's the next part of the story. For a few seconds, I couldn't even process what Jake had just said. My hands trembled as I reached for him. "What are you talking about?" My voice barely came out above a whisper. Jake ran a hand through his hair, pacing the length of our small living room. I don't think this is right. I've been thinking about it for a while, and your mom," he hesitated, then shook his head. "She made some good points." I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. "My mom?" I repeated, disbelief crashing over me like a wave. "Jake, please tell me you're not doing this because of her." He finally met my eyes, guilt clouding his face. That was all the confirmation I needed. "I just don't think we're ready," he continued, his voice breaking slightly. "Maybe your mom sees something I don't. Maybe she's right." I let out a bitter laugh, anger rising through my grief. "Right? About what? That you're going to leave me? Because guess what, Jake? If you walk out that door, you're proving her right." Tears welled in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I wanted to scream, to beg him to stay, but deep down, I knew that if he was willing to let my mother manipulate him into leaving, I would never be able to trust him again. "Please don't do this," I said one last time, my voice cracking. But he didn't even hesitate. He just turned, grabbed his bag, already packed, and walked out. The next few months were a blur. The wedding was canceled, and I cut off my mother completely. She acted like she had done me a favor, like she had saved me from a huge mistake. "You'll thank me one day," she told me, her voice dripping with smug satisfaction. I never did. I went through the motions, trying to move on, but the betrayal burned deep. Not just from Jake, but from her. It wasn't just about the breakup. It was about the years of control, the manipulation, the way she had never wanted me to have a life of my own. And then, 1 year later, she showed up on my doorstep, bags in hand, looking like she had just crawled out of hell. "Sweetheart," she said, her voice trembling, "I need your help." I stared at her, speechless. My mother, the woman who tore my life apart, was now asking me for a place to stay. I stood in the doorway, gripping the frame so tightly my knuckles turned white. My mother looked awful. Her once perfectly styled hair was disheveled, her designer clothes wrinkled, and her eyes, usually sharp and full of judgment, were red and swollen. I should have felt satisfaction. I should have felt something other than the numb, creeping coldness spreading through my chest. "What are you doing here?" My voice came out steadier than I expected. She let out a shuddering breath, clutching the strap of her bag like it was the only thing holding her together. I have nowhere else to go." I blinked. "Excuse me?" She licked her lips, glancing around like she was afraid the neighbors might hear. "Jake, he He took everything. Her voice cracked on the last word, and she dropped her gaze to the ground. The money. The house. He drained my accounts and ran off with someone else. My stomach twisted. Jake? My Jake? I nearly laughed. The irony was too sharp, too cruel. She had spent years warning me about him, convincing him to leave me because he wasn't good enough. And now she was standing here, a victim of the very man she had turned against me for. I crossed my arms, my heart pounding in my ears. So, let me get this straight. You convinced my fiancé to leave me, destroyed my wedding, told me I'd thank you someday. And now you want my help because the same man you chose over me scammed you? Her face crumpled. I didn't, she exhaled shakily. I didn't know he was like that. I thought I was protecting you. I shook my head, feeling a bitter laugh rise in my throat. No, you weren't protecting me. You were controlling me. And now that your life is in shambles, you think I'm just going to take you in? She looked up at me, desperation flashing across her face. I'm your mother, honey. Please. I have nowhere else to go. For a moment, I wavered. No matter what she had done, she was still my mom. She had raised me, clothed me, fed me. And now she was broken, standing in front of me, completely powerless. But then I remembered the nights I had spent crying over Jake. The embarrassment of canceling my wedding. The way she had smiled while telling me I'd be better off without him. I took a slow breath and steadied myself. That's not my problem, I said softly. I hope you figure something out, Mom. But it won't be here. And with that, I closed the door. I expected her to leave. To at least have the dignity to walk away after everything she had done. But my mother wasn't the type to give up that easily. The next morning, I woke up to a barrage of messages from family members. Aunt Linda, how could you throw your own mother out on the street? Cousin Melissa, she made a mistake, but she's still your mom. You're really going to let her be homeless? Grandma, sweetheart, please call me. Your mother is devastated. You're better than this. I groaned and threw my phone across the bed. I should have known. She had spent years perfecting the art of playing the victim. I scrolled through my notifications until I saw it. Her Facebook post. Sometimes, the people you love the most turn their backs on you when you need them the most. I always did my best as a mother, but I guess some people have cold hearts. I never thought my own daughter would abandon me in my time of need. Over 500 likes and comments. Stay strong, Susan. Your daughter is ungrateful. I can't believe she would do this to you. She'll regret it one day. Don't worry, karma always comes around. I felt sick. The same woman who had spent years manipulating me had just turned the entire family against me. Overnight. I was still fuming when my best friend, Rachel, called. Have you seen the news? She asked, her voice breathless. I sat up straighter. What? No. What happened? Check your email, she said. I just sent you something. I opened the link she forwarded and nearly dropped my phone. Local businesswoman sues former fiancé over fraud and theft. And there, right in the middle of the article, was a photo of Jake. My Jake. The same man who had left me a week before our wedding. The article detailed how he had allegedly conned multiple women, including my mother, out of thousands of dollars. He had a pattern of love-bombing wealthy or financially stable women, convincing them to merge assets and then disappearing with their money. And the worst part? My mother wasn't just a victim. She had been his accomplice. I scrolled down, my heart racing as I read the details. She had introduced Jake to at least 3 other women after me, encouraging them to trust him, to invest in his businesses, to marry him. In exchange, he had been giving her a cut of the money. And then, apparently, he had turned on her. He wiped her accounts clean and vanished without a trace. My hands trembled. My mother hadn't just destroyed my relationship. She had been actively helping Jake scam other women. And now she wanted me to take her in? I took a deep breath and dialed her number. She answered on the second ring. I knew you'd call, she said, her voice trembling. I knew you wouldn't abandon me. I clenched my jaw. Mom, I said, forcing my voice to stay even. Did you help Jake scam those women? Silence. Then, a soft, nervous laugh. What kind of question is that? It's a yes or no question. She sighed dramatically. Honey, it's not as black and white as you think. Yes, I introduced him to some friends, but I never thought he would do this to me. I trusted him, just like you did. I squeezed my eyes shut. You knew what he was doing. A pause. Then, barely a whisper, yes. I exhaled slowly. You don't need my help, Mom. You need a lawyer. And with that, I hung up. I barely had time to process the conversation before my phone rang again. Rachel? Did you just hang up on her? She asked, almost breathless. Yeah, I muttered, rubbing my temples. She admitted it, Ratch. She knew what Jake was doing, and she still helped him. And now she expects me to save her? Rachel let out a low whistle. Well, she's about to have bigger problems. Turn on the news. I grabbed the remote, flipping to the local news station. My stomach clenched as I saw my mother's face plastered across the screen. Breaking news. Woman linked to fraud ring under investigation. The reporter stood in front of my mother's former house, now seized as part of the investigation. Authorities have confirmed that Susan Hartley, a prominent local socialite, is being investigated for her ties to alleged con artist Jake Reynolds. Reynolds, known for defrauding multiple women out of their life savings, vanished weeks ago. However, court records show that Hartley may have played a direct role in helping him connect with victims. I sucked in a sharp breath. She's screwed, Rachel muttered. I barely heard her. The camera panned to my mother, who was standing outside the house, sobbing, reporters swarming her. I didn't know, she wailed, mascara running down her face. I'm a victim, too. He lied to me. One of the reporters cut in. Susan, court documents show that you personally introduced Jake Reynolds to at least 3 women he later defrauded. Do you deny knowing about his activities? My mother let out a shaky breath. She hesitated. I was tricked, just like them. The reporter didn't buy it. Then why did you receive direct transfers from these women's accounts into your personal bank account? I nearly dropped the remote. Oh my God, I whispered. Rachel let out a low whistle. Welp, that's game over. The camera zoomed in on my mother's stunned expression. She tried to stammer out an answer, but it was too late. The public knew, and as I sat there, watching the woman who had destroyed my wedding, manipulated my life, and betrayed me, I felt something I never thought I would. Relief. For the first time in my life, my mother couldn't twist the truth. She couldn't gaslight her way out of this one. The world finally saw her for who she really was. And I was finally free. The media frenzy around my mother's fraud case was bad enough, but what came next was something no one saw coming. A week after the news broke, I got a message from an unknown number. Unknown. You might want to see this before it spreads. Attached was a link. My stomach twisted as I hesitated, my thumb hovering over it. Rachel was sitting next to me on my couch, scrolling through her phone. What's wrong? I showed her the message. Her eyes widened. Do not click that. It's probably a scam. But something in my gut told me it wasn't. I clicked the link. It took me to a private forum, and right there, in big bold letters, was a post titled, Disgraced Socialite Susan Hartley Caught Selling Herself to Pay Off Legal Fees. I felt my pulse hammer as I scrolled down. There were photos. My mother, half-dressed, standing in a dimly lit hotel room. A much younger man was in the background, barely clothed, smirking at the camera. And the worst part? There was a video. Rachel gasped. Oh my God. I barely breathed as I clicked play. The clip was shaky, filmed on a phone. My mother was sitting on the edge of a hotel bed, crying, her makeup smeared. A man's voice, deep, mocking, spoke from behind the camera. You said you needed money, right? He taunted. She sniffled. I don't have a choice. The camera panned down to a stack of cash on the nightstand. I'll take care of you, baby, the man chuckled. As long as you do exactly what I say. Then the screen cut to black. My stomach turned. Rachel was pale, covering her mouth. Holy SHD starred. I couldn't think, couldn't breathe. My mother, once a wealthy, powerful woman, had fallen so far that she was selling herself to shady men for cash. And now, someone had leaked it. It didn't take long for the story to blow up. Within hours, the video had spread across Reddit, Twitter, and even gossip sites. The same people who had once defended my mother were now ripping her apart. At Scandal Daily, from high society to hotel rooms, Susan Hartley's fall from grace is one for the books. At Truth Uncovered, first, she scams women with her con artist ex. Now, she's selling herself to keep up her lifestyle? Pathetic. At Exposed News, leaked footage shows disgraced socialite Susan Hartley in a compromising situation. Let's just say, she's really desperate for cash. The worst part? Some news outlets started hinting that she might have been doing this for years. That even before Jake scammed her, she had been using men for money, quietly, discreetly, manipulating wealthy older men into helping her with lavish gifts and secret payments. And now that she had no money left, she had resorted to something even dirtier. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Family members were horrified. Friends were sending me links, asking if I was okay. Even my boss pulled me aside at work and awkwardly asked if I needed time off to handle personal matters. And my mother? She was radio silent. I knew it was only a matter of time before she reached out. Sure enough, 3 days later, my phone rang. Mom. I let it ring. Then a voicemail popped up. I hesitated, then pressed play. Her voice was shaky, desperate. Sweetheart, please, I need you. A sharp inhale. I know you've seen the video. I made a mistake. I didn't think they'd record me. They told me I'd be taken care of. A ragged breath. I just need somewhere to stay. Please, honey. I don't have anywhere else to go. Then, barely above a whisper. I'll die out here. My hand clenched around the phone. This woman, who had ruined my life, destroyed my wedding, and scammed innocent people, was begging me to save her. But after everything she had done, did she even deserve it? I stared at my phone, her words echoing in my ears. I'll die out here. It was the kind of line she always used, dramatic, manipulative, dripping with desperation. But this time, something about it felt real. Rachel, sitting across from me, leaned forward. Tell me you're not actually considering helping her. I swallowed hard. She's still my mom. Rachel scoffed. She ruined your life. She scammed people. She slept with random men for cash and got caught on camera. And now she wants you to fix it? I clenched my jaw. She's homeless, Ratch. What if she really has nowhere to go? Rachel rolled her eyes. She's not homeless. She's just not living in luxury anymore. And let's be real. She'll drag you down with her if you let her back in. I wanted to argue, but deep down, I knew she was right. Still, something in me hesitated. So instead of answering right away, I decided to find out the truth. That night, I did something I hadn't done in months. I went looking for my mother. If she was really on the streets, if she was truly at rock bottom, I needed to see it with my own eyes before making a decision. I drove downtown, checking the areas where I knew desperate people gathered. Cheap motels, shelters, bars where older men preyed on younger women. And then, just as I was about to give up, I found her. Not shivering in some alley, not curled up in a shelter, but sitting in the VIP section of an upscale nightclub, drinking expensive champagne with a man who had to be at least 70 years old. My blood ran cold. She was dressed in a tight black dress, heels that screamed money, and enough jewelry to make it obvious someone was still funding her lifestyle. And then, right in front of my eyes, she leaned in, whispered something in the old man's ear, and he slipped a thick stack of cash into her purse. I felt my stomach churn. She lied. She wasn't struggling. She wasn't dying in the streets. She was doing the same thing she always did. Using people, manipulating, surviving off the backs of men who didn't know any better. And the second she thought she could manipulate me, she had put on the poor, helpless mother act. I had almost fallen for it. Almost. I took out my phone and snapped a picture. Then, heart pounding, I walked inside. She didn't see me at first. She was too busy laughing, twirling a lock of hair around her finger while the old man, her latest victim, gushed over her like she was some kind of goddess. I walked right up to her table and dropped my phone in front of her. Screen lit up with the photo I had just taken. Her smile froze. Slowly, she looked up at me, her face draining of color. "Oh," she breathed. "Honey, this isn't what it looks like." I let out a short, bitter laugh. "Really? Because it looks like you're lying to me again. It looks like you're fine. It looks like you don't need my help at all." The old man, clearly confused, glanced between us. Susan, who is this? She hesitated. Then, without missing a beat, she lied again. She's nobody, she said, voice cold and dismissive. Just a jealous little girl trying to cause drama. My heart snapped. I don't know why I expected anything else. She would rather protect her con than admit the truth. She would rather call me nobody than acknowledge what she had done to me. I stepped back, shaking my head. Wow, I whispered. I actually thought you had changed. She had the audacity to reach for my hand. Sweetheart. I pulled away like she burned me. Don't, ever, call me that again. Her eyes flashed. After everything I've done for you. No, I cut in, my voice firm. After everything you've done to me. She opened her mouth to argue, but I was already walking away. And this time, I wasn't looking back. The moment I stepped outside, I pulled up the photo again. I thought about keeping it to myself, about walking away quietly. But then I thought about all the people she had scammed, all the women she had helped Jake con, all the lies she had told to manipulate me, my family, everyone. And I made a decision. I forwarded the picture to a gossip site. No words, no explanation, just the truth. By morning, the story was everywhere. Fallen socialite Susan Hartley caught seducing older men for money, just days after claiming homelessness. The same people who had once pitted her were tearing her apart. So she wasn't really struggling. She was just finessing men? This woman is a straight-up con artist. Good for her daughter for cutting her off. Imagine destroying your own kid's life and then expecting them to save you. Karma is AB*TCH. Even family members who had defended her were calling me, apologizing. She tried to call me again. I didn't answer. She tried showing up at my apartment. I didn't let her in. She had spent years twisting the truth, manipulating everyone, thinking she was untouchable. Now, she had no more lies left to tell. And for the first time in my life, she was finally paying the price. For as long as I can remember, my mother